People.
This has been an extremely difficult and emotional decision for us, but after an exhaustive and thorough analysis for the continued health and strength of our iconic company, we feel we have been left with no choice. And the choice they made is to relocate their headquarters from Massachusetts to Tennessee.
Tennessee, yes.
Yeah, Rocky Top. He specifically did, Mr. Smith cited legislation proposed in Massachusetts that would prohibit the company from manufacturing certain firearms in the state. Smith saying these bills would prevent Smith & Wesson from manufacturing firearms that are legal in almost every state in America and that are safely used by tens of millions of law-abiding citizens every day. Oh, well, that's tough decision. Probably should have never located Massachusetts in the first place. Tennessee will be happy to have them. But this is, the continued fight. That's what the gun issue, Second Amendment issue, amid everything else that's going on with COVID and socialist spendathons. It was a central issue in the gubernatorial debate in New Jersey, the governor's the governor's race between Phil Murphy and his Republican challenger the other night. Second Amendment was an issue. It's become a public health issue because the CDC is going to treat gun violence as a public health issue. And you know how that goes. That's the backdoor way to get guns out of homes, is having doctors ask parents if there's a gun in the house or if you have kids and so on and so forth. Right. Well, one of the reasons they left Massachusetts is to get away from people like this, a TikToker.
My opinions are just as important as those who were born before me. I know I am young, but I know what I'm saying. I'm sick of your thoughts and I'm sick of your praying. Children are being slaughtered in numbers. Mothers and fathers losing sons and daughters. We blame the Muslims and the Jewish instead of the ones who actually do it. This song is an attack. It's a eulogy in the memory of those now living. A proclamation to the older generation that doesn't understand that the Second Amendment isn't protection. It's a death sentence. The defendant's a gun and the convicted is innocent. It's ironic, isn't it?
Do you want to sing the second verse, or is that
No,
enough?
I'm okay.
For reaction to that little ditty, the Second Amendment is murder? What did she say? I lost the rhyme scheme about halfway in. Brad Polumbo joins us now, policy correspondent for the Foundation for Economic Education, contributor to the Washington Examiner, and YouTube reactor to lunacy like that. Brad, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the Second Amendment and the ongoing assaults at the state and local level much because of the Supreme Court cases and because of other equally pressing issues in some respects. But the left is, relentless when it comes to promoting abortion, as we see with this argument over the heartbeat law and the case coming before the Supreme Court this term, as well as with trying to restrict people's Second Amendment rights, even against the backdrop of those Supreme Court cases.
Yeah, it's a two-front battle right now. So on one hand, you have this policy war that you described that's going on in Massachusetts, my home state, actually.
Oh.
And what a shame it is what they've been doing to that state. But that's one front, right? The other front is the cultural front. And I have to tell you, I am technically just under the edge where I count as Gen Z. And so I'm plugged into this in a way that maybe many of your listeners aren't. The next generation has really embedded a lot of this anti-gun ideology, this hate for the Second Amendment, into its DNA. And that's because, like the video that you just played, I reacted to that on my YouTube channel. People just search Brad Polumbo. But it's not some random video that 5 people liked. That had more than 1 million likes, which means it probably had 10 million views. And it's just one of literally thousands of pieces of viral content saying things like the Second Amendment is a death sentence. I mean, there's actually more instances per year of defensive gun use to protect yourself than gun crime in America. But of course, that doesn't make it into viral TikTok. So we can't overlook this. The policy front is super important. That's most of what I do. But we also have to push back on this at the cultural and social media level.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. I think that's spot on. And, the other thing, too, is you have to attack with facts these, bumper sticker slogans that are used by the gun banners. So, for example, here in Chicago, one of the murder capitals of the world, of America, unfortunately, every time you talk about a city that has given over to predators because of the defund the police, movement and the non-prosecution prosecutors we have, you get the Chicago's located next to Indiana. Indiana has lax gun laws, so we have illegal guns flowing into Chicago from Indiana, and this is the reason we have one of the highest murder per capita rates in the country. And of course, there's no real evidentiary basis for that, and there's certainly no explanation about illegal guns from Indiana being the proximate cause for the 30% increase in murders year over year in just the last year, as well as the nearly doubling of carjackings and so on and so forth. But they get away with just saying, or they attempt to get away with just saying, oh, it's illegal guns from Indiana. There's a lax gun law. There's a gun law that's not stringent enough. And that's the reason that states with otherwise strict gun laws, cities with otherwise strict gun laws, even with Supreme Court precedents like Chicago, are suffering this sort of violence.
Yeah, it's just a very naive argument, because even if you took it at face value, and I agree that we shouldn't, but even if you did, are they suggesting that there's never going to be somewhere with weak gun laws for guns to come from? I mean, have they heard of Mexico?
Right.
Our southern border, lots of things come over our southern border.
Have they heard of the ATF?
To come into the U.S.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. And the other issue, too, that just doesn't make any sense is you have states like, again, I'm from New England, you have states like New Hampshire, where they have more guns than people, I would guess. I mean, it's one of the most heavily armed states in the country, and it's got like basement level, bottom low crime rates and murder rates. It's incredibly safe. Same thing with Vermont, which is actually a Democrat state, but has pretty relaxed gun laws and a lot of gun ownership. They have very little murder and crime. So it's not as simple as guns bad, bans good. If you would disagree with me, you want children to die. I mean, it's unfortunate how much this issue has just been captured by emotional demagoguing with very little relation to the facts on the ground.
Yeah, and the problem is here in Chicago, I mean, we have several gun laws that are already in place, but the gangbangers don't really follow the law, if you know what I'm saying.
Shocking.
Yeah. It is.
It's like Wild West here.
Right.
Shootouts at 5 o'clock on, main thoroughfares downtown. It's sickening.
But like citizens do follow the law most of the time. So if I live someplace like Chicago that was dangerous like that, I'd want to be able to defend myself, right? But if you pass laws saying I can't, that won't stop criminals, but I would probably follow it, right? Because I'm a law-abiding citizen. I mean, we have something similar. I live in the D.C. area, but D.C., I mean, for all intents and purposes, is a Second Amendment free zone. They've made their gun laws, they've just messed with it so much that it's very, very difficult to meaningfully carry a gun with you through the city without, accidentally committing a crime every day and potentially getting yourself arrested and subject to serious fines and everything. And it's like, they also had the police stand back for days and let riots consume the city and looting. And it's like, of all the times that you should know the importance of the Second Amendment and self-defense, the last couple of years have really, really reiterated that people need to be able to defend themselves, because unfortunately they cannot rely on the government to defend them.
Another topic, we've got almost $30 trillion in debt, another $100 trillion plus in unfunded liabilities. And what the D.C. press corps calls a moderate is someone who only wants to spend another $2.7 trillion right now that we don't have. That's a moderate in D.C. So the end of the fiscal conservative in Washington, D.C., is that upon us finally?
Oh, that was upon us a while ago.
Yeah.
Not going to lie to you, but it's funny. Like, Joe Manchin is not a conservative, the senator from West Virginia. He's not like fiscally conservative. He's saying I'll only want 1.5 trillion in climate change and welfare bill and 1.2 trillion in infrastructure bill, whereas they want 3.5 trillion and 1.2 trillion. It's like, we're talking funny money here. This is trillions of. It's like they're just gaslighting us. They're just like, oh, it costs $0.
Costs nothing.
They just say this with a straight face, and nobody corrects them. Nobody calls them out. I mean, it's like, imagine if Trump had done that. If he just walked around and said, actually, my tax cuts cost $0. The media would have debunked that because it wouldn't have been true. But Biden, they just nod along, I guess.
Well, and I can't wait for the Manchin press release if the funny money spend on the reconciliation side is limited to 1.5 trillion. You know what the press release will say? Joe Biden saves American taxpayers $2 trillion. Because we're spending 1.5 instead of 3. Yeah, I mean, that's what it'll say for sure. This is how they account for these things.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't understand basic economics. Like Biden's whole shtick is that it actually costs $0 because supposedly they're going to raise the taxes to pay for it rather than add it to the national debt, which it's actually very unlikely that their bill won't add to the debt. But even if you assume that at face value, that's not what $0 price tag means. It still costs trillions. You're raising taxes. That's the cost. That's like saying that if I go to the grocery store and I pay with cash instead of putting it on my credit card, the price tag is zero. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's obviously false, but they just keep repeating it and gaslighting us because they know that unfortunately nobody's really going to call them out on it in terms of the mainstream media.
Well, and it's like this with it's just everything. It is just endless from every direction. So one of the other shibboleths of the left that you hear all the time, you're hearing again, is something like the Warren Buffett pays a lower effective marginal tax rate than his secretary kind of thing. And in point of fact, not only just in terms of the top 1% pay 40% of all federal income taxes, top 10%, about 70%, so on and so forth, that it is that progressive, but also the effective rate. The top 1%'s average effective rate in 2018 was 25.5%. The top 25% was 16.8%. The top 50% was 14.6%, and on down to the bottom 50%, which was 3.5%. So it is progressive, not regressive, when it comes to the effective rate, in addition to the distribution of actual burden.
Yeah, we do have a very progressive tax system. They love to say tax the rich, but we already do that more than most other countries, more than much of Europe, actually. What the reason they're insisting that is because the truth is they need broad-based middle and working class tax hikes to come even close to paying for their agenda. And they know that's unpopular, so they just say tax the rich, tax the rich. But also to the extent that any businesses or rich people are able to reduce their taxes or evade taxes in legal ways that are undesirable, it's usually because of like tax breaks and loopholes. And it's definitely overstated, but it's also due to the kinds of things that like people like Joe Biden have written into our tax code in their 40 years in charge. So it's like hilarious to see him. He tweeted the other day, well, my agenda costs $0. Instead of wasting money on tax breaks and loopholes and tax evasion, we're going to make a once-in-a-generation investment in working America. Like, Joe, who wrote the tax code? Literally you and your cronies, the same people that are complaining. You've had industry lobbyists in your ear for 30 years as you write different tax provisions and loopholes to help businesses that are connected to you. So it's just hypocritical beyond belief.
Great point. He's Brad Polumbo, policy correspondent for the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, and contributor to the Washington Examiner as well. Brad, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Impact Mortgage Corp. DBA